Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss something that, above all other things, the Conservatives have done over the past decade and done to the max this year. This one really mustn't be forgotten at the next general election, and it is austerity, of course. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has said that there will be no more austerity at the same time as he was announcing austerity measures. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, I mean, this is now becoming a feature of the Conservative government. I can't even say that it's just started with Boris Johnson either. The Conservatives do something whilst loudly proclaiming that they will never do it. It's like the NHS will never be privatised. Matt Hancock said there'll be no privatisation of the NHS on my watch. And yet, I mean, there was already a fair amount of privatisation before it became his watch. And under his watch, that amount of privatisation has accelerated this year in particular. So Rishi Sunak, you know, he said that it's going to have to be the poor that pay for the Conservative Party's largesse, really, their excess in borrowing vast sums of money to enrich their friends and party donors. And the first step to this is another pay freeze. So to say that the Chancellor's latest announcement is a disappointment, I suppose would be a bit of a lie, because it was wholly expected. You know, I spent this year wondering, so how are they going to put up taxes for the poor that doesn't impact the more well-off? I mean, I would argue that anyone not seeing this coming was not really paying attention, because this is the obvious way to do it. Now, I know on this occasion, there is a slightly different dynamic that might have got people to think, well, maybe he wouldn't have gone down this path because of the Conservative MPs in the north of England. So these represent constituencies that are all too often left behind by Conservative government. I know there's others elsewhere as well, like Scotland, but Scotland don't have too many Conservative MPs, although still a distressing number, really, when all things considered. And so, you know, the first to suffer cutbacks will, of course, be these people from places where now there are quite a few Conservative MPs because of Brexit. Now, during David Cameron's years of austerity, which never actually ended under May or Johnson, they try and now claim that austerity is over, there's no more austerity. It's never stopped, ever. The wealthiest in the country have actually become a lot richer under every one of these prime ministers. And there was never an all in it together attitude, as much as they said it. It was always and remains the poor paying for the already well off. You know, that's how Conservative governments work. They don't have any other economic policy. And Danny Dyer, some may not know, I'm not going to go into too many details, but he's a bit forthright in his views, shall we say. Not necessarily everyone always agrees with those views. But he said something the other day that I think a lot of people had to agree with. And it's the idea of benefits. He was trying to basically say that people who need benefits, why are you knocking them? Quite a lot of people on benefits. He said, yeah, okay, there might be some people who take the mickey, but there's quite a lot of people on benefits work very, very hard. The reason they're on benefits is not because they're not working or not because they don't want to work, but because working full-time, do you know what, isn't enough to pay the bills. So they need benefits. And he said, really, why are you attacking the people on the benefits? Because the people really benefiting are the business owners, the people who are not paying them enough. They're doing full-time work. They're working hard, and yet they're not earning enough to get by. Well, hang on a minute. Why are we, lambasting these people who need more to be able to get by? Why are we not saying they should be paid a proper living wage? It's all wrong. So in actual fact, the benefits are not really being paid to the worker. They're being paid to the wealthy business owner. I know not all business owners are wealthy, but generally speaking, the wealthy business owner who then gets away with paying less. So that's public money effectively going into the coffers of the wealthy. And, you know, there's a lot of people who are reliant upon benefits in these now, where the Red Wall Tories are in the north of England, and you would think that those Red Wall Tory MPs would kick up a fuss about it. And maybe, you know, maybe they will cause trouble over the next few years. I expect them to, and I've said so before. But a lot of that will depend on how the public perceive what they're doing. If the public are just blind to all of this, then they won't put a lot of pressure on those Tory MPs, and then those Tory MPs won't need to put a lot of pressure on the government because they don't really care. I'm not saying none of them do, but most of them are not really going to be caring in enough numbers unless they're getting grief from their own constituents, and it's got the risk of losing them the seat in the next election. And the insidious thing about a pay freeze is that people don't see it for what it actually is. A pay cut. It is a pay cut. That's what it is, because over time inflation means that your expenses go up. So if your pay remains the same over a period of years, then your disposable income is coming down because everything's going up. But what do you do? What do you see? You don't see the pay freeze as being responsible for this. Oh, prices are always going up. Yeah, prices go up. That's what happens. But somehow people don't see what the real problem is. And for those who do, then there's stage 2 of the deception, the lie about public finances. Well, the reason we've had to do this pay freeze is because the economy is in bad shape, they'll say. We need to tighten our belts, all in it together. But we're not. Come the next general election, we'll find that the wealthy have increased their wealth yet again, and those on average incomes will be poorer yet again. This has been the case for every single one of the last few general elections, and it will be the same for the next one, and it will be worse yet. Sunak said, I quote, "This has been a tough year for us all." No, it bloody hasn't. Hasn't been a tough year for him. Hasn't been a tough year for all the people close to him and his colleagues that have all made out like bandits due to their corrupt public spending. It's been a tough year for most of us, and especially tough for those who have lost jobs as a direct result of this deliberate decision not to extend adequate income and business support until his U-turn, of course, earlier this month. But that came too late for a lot of people. And it's also going to be a tougher year in 2021 due, again, to his very deliberate policy to force the poor to pay for his largesse in allocating billions of pounds of borrowing to unsuitable businesses. We're not talking about the borrowing that had to take place because, of course, COVID hit the economy very hard. Yes, absolutely. We're talking about the waste, the money that either we spent more forgetting what we got, because, again, things that are coming out now, the PPE that went to the because not all of the contracts, let us be clear here, not all of the contracts went to enriched Tory donors and friends. Some of it had to go to people who delivered, but what is now emerging for the contracts that did go to Tory donors and mates, somehow we ended up paying per unit a very, very high price indeed for the PPE that we did get. Sometimes massively inflated prices above and beyond the normal market value, which, yes, increased a bit with demand. And you know, this borrowing that has been used to fund what has been wasted public money, you know, given money to businesses and individuals that were totally unsuitable, can only be described as a raid on the country's coffers under cover of COVID. And now he wants the poor to pay for it. Then you've got stage 3 of the deception, lying about what the policy even is. This pay freeze is not a return to austerity, claims Sunak. Of course it is. That's exactly what austerity is. Suppressing the incomes of the poor whilst overseeing higher incomes and lower taxes for the wealthy is an absolute feature of specifically David Cameron's austerity. There were 2 key aspects to Cameron's austerity, which he was happy to call austerity. One, pay freezes for public sector workers. Sunak has announced this now. So austerity has, actually I was going to say restarted, but it never really ended. The pay freezes ended, but other forms of austerity didn't. So austerity as a whole has never ended under this government. They never got back up to where Labour were in the last government in terms of pay. Those public sector workers have never got back up in real terms to the pay values that they were getting under Labour. So people are still down on the deal under the Conservatives. And then the second part was, of course, cutting public services. This is also happening. Sunak says that there will be significant public service spending increases next year. No, there won't. So now you've got stage 4 of the lie. So they go on about how badly the economy is doing. but how great they are at managing it. And due to their stunning management skills, we're going to see the benefits next year. They've been doing this for over 10 years now. We just need to wait a little bit longer and it'll be fine. And the thing is, they always sort of blame the Labour government. The further away you get from that Labour government, the more obvious the lie becomes. But it's still not obvious enough for most people, it seems. They will never, ever show us the benefits of their superb economic handling skills because they don't have them. They just use it to raid the economy for their own betterment. You know, until enough people start to see this, they will keep telling those lies because those lies will keep working on enough people. And when you look at the extra public spending that he's talking about, it's effectively worthless. It actually amounts, the total amount of extra public service spending he's talking about amounts to less than the amount of money given to test and trace alone that is still not accounted for. The amount that test and trace has been given that we can still not pin to something they've used that money for is greater than the total amount of money he is saying he's releasing for public spending next year. And it also pales into insignificance when you consider the amount of money that Dominic Cummings still has control over. Everyone talking about the fact that Dominic Cummings has gone. No, he hasn't. He's gone from number 10. He's still got all that Operation Moonshot money. He's still allocating that. And for what? Originally, they said what it was supposed to be used for. We knew that was laughable. Now, the budget's still there. The money's still being spent. But we now don't know what they're going to spend it on. They've said that Operation Moonshot is no longer realistic. So what's the money for now? The project will go nowhere as it always does, other than to offshore bank accounts indirectly. And then there's always another aspect to Conservative spending promises. So they're never actually as much as they say they are. They say they're allocating this much money. And, you know, technically they are. But that money won't be spent. For example, some of the money being promised can't be spent. Now, take, for example, the promise for new nurses and GPs. Sure, they can put money into the system. But it's really easy to put money in the system and go, oh, we'll put all this money into the system if it doesn't get spent. Because there is already money in the system without anything new for tens of thousands more nurses and doctors because we're really short, really badly short. The money is in the system. If suitable doctors and nurses, and when I say suitable I mean qualified, if actual doctors and nurses applied for those jobs, they could get them because the money is already there in the system. But when you can't attract people to do those jobs for a variety of reasons, all of them caused by the Tories, then promising more money is another form of deception. Because if you've already got money in the system to pay for loads more nurses and doctors that you are not able to get, what good is more? What good is it? They know that that money's never going to be spent, so that's fine. They can promise it. That's why when you look at their finances, it doesn't really add up. But that's fine because they know that it's not going to be spent. And although the reasons for these NHS staff shortages are numerous, they're all Tory flavoured. One of the big ones for nurses, midwives and paramedics is pay. Apparently, NHS staff have to be left out of this pay freeze. But that doesn't mean their pay is competitive still. Also, their expenses have just gone up. Because not only do they have to pay car parking charges if they work at a hospital. A lot of people keep saying to me how many people, you know, when they are on they drive to work and park in the car park have to actually pay. Not that many. But Johnson said he was getting rid of the parking charges for everyone, not just staff, but for everyone. But in actual fact, no, they're still there in a lot of hospitals. And for NHS staff, those charges have actually, on average, doubled. For some, it's much more than doubled. And this is to say, and that's recently, by the way. I don't mean since the Conservatives came to power. I mean in the last few months. And this is to say nothing of the NHS surcharge that exists for foreign NHS workers. And then you think, so hang on a Phil, they U-turned on that. They promised that they wouldn't, that they'd abolish the NHS surcharge for foreign NHS workers. Yeah, they promised it, and they never delivered it. That surcharge is still in place. They just U-turned to get it out the papers. Once the papers lost interest, quietly did nothing about it. All in all, the government doesn't need to freeze NHS pay to make the job unattractive to the point where you would have to be... I don't even know where you would have to be to believe that this government will make good on their promises to plug the staff shortages. I will accept that over the last year there has been a net increase in the number of nurses, but it is still tens of thousands short. In fact, there's over 40,000. We're over 40,000 nurses short. In the last year, Boris Johnson has reduced that by 1,000. It's like a couple of percent. He's reduced it by. That at that rate, he's going to need half a century to get the shortages sorted. But this lie will continue because it's the only thing stopping these Northern Red Wall Tory MPs from kicking up a fuss. Keep promising them that the good times are coming, even as you deliver worse and worse times. So, you know, the key features of the austerity programme being begun under Cameron, both are currently in place now. In theory, if he's not lying about the public spending increases and he's just keeping a load of them secret for some reason, I mean, usually when you've got spending, you announce it quite quickly. But that'll be just one aspect. But one aspect of austerity is still austerity. And this isn't some dodgy definition of austerity that I'm coming up with for political purposes, just because I'm not in favour of what he's doing or I don't think he's going far enough. The economic definition of austerity is met. Absolutely met. It is austerity. All he has to do now is to come up with a way to directly increase taxes in a way that hits the poor disproportionately. And we have not just austerity, but David Cameron's extreme austerity programme in full swing. And let us not forget that Rishi Sunak, when he was made Chancellor and before the pandemic even hit, had told government departments that they should look at significant cuts to their budget. This isn't about COVID. He was already getting them to do that regardless. At the time when they said that after 10 years of Conservative government, they'd finally got the economy back on track. He was telling ministers, you need to think about budget cuts. So the idea that he's doing this because of the pandemic is also a nonsense. This is a continuation of what he was doing after 10 years of Conservative government. 10 years of superb economic handling, apparently. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.